Hi everyone, it's Nicole here for Honeybee Stamps with a Bill the Bear card. This card features all new stamps and dies from the Be Bold release. And I am combining this Bill the Bear stamp set. This is a large 6x8 stamp set, has lots of coordinating dies. With the previously released Outdoor Scene Builders, we're going to use the cloud and then the mountain border. Sentiments from the Goodness Gracious stamp set, and then the branch and the beehive from the birds and the bees stamp set. I'm going to start by stamping all of the images I am going to use for my design on some Bristol Smooth cardstock. This is a scrap here with VersaFine ONYX black ink, and then we're going to start coloring everything in. I'm using lots and lots of images here today. Now, one of the things about this particular design is that the size and scale of the images when used together, and I really wanted to incorporate the branch and the beehive from the Birds and the Bees stamp set with Bill the Bear, is that they are not going to fit on a standard A2 size card base. Excuse me. They are just too big to try to cram them all into such a small area. So what I'm going to do instead is create an A7 size card, which is 5x7, probably more the standard size card that you would see in a greeting card that you would buy at the grocery store or at the discount store, whatever. And what's awesome is Honeybee has several basic die sets, including the newest from the Be Bold released, which is the Scalloped A7 frame dies. And I'm going to use the largest from that to kind of serve as the background for my card. It has a little bit of a decorative edge, but this size of a card, a 5x7 card, is going to give me much more room, and scale-wise, it's going to work a lot better with the design. If at any time while I'm coloring here, which I did leave the coloring in the video, if you're curious what colors of Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers I'm using, they are listed across the bottom of the screen. I had to work a little bit harder for this bear. It kept wanting to be really blotchy. These are water-based markers. I probably could have solved a lot of that and had a much more quote-unquote watercolor effect and look had I chosen to use a water brush pen or a paintbrush dipped in water to do my blending, but I just kind of persevered and I ended up getting a result I really liked for my bear. But you could do that if you wanted it to blend maybe just a tiny bit easier. Also, I want to note that the beehive there, I did not like my colors that I used for that, so kind of ignore that beehive. We are going to color another one in a little bit. I left that out of the video since I colored it with some colors that I didn't particularly love. Sometimes that happens. Now, I decided to go kind of bright and colorful with my accessories because there's a lot of neutrals going on. The bear is in neutrals, the branch, the tree stump, all of those are kind of neutrals. The cattail will be. And so I decided to do his vest in some fun aquas. That's turquoise, green, and green shadow. And then the hat has that same colorway in the stripe, but then the hat itself is going to be blue and English lavender. I like those colors together. Then we're going to do some bright colors for the mushrooms, for the honey pot, and then of course the green leaves add that nice touch. If you wanted this to be more of a fall theme scene, I would color the leaves in oranges and reds, browns, even the leaves along the ground, maybe add a few additional ones. You could switch this into a fall scene super easy. Now the little bumblebees are from both the Birds and the Bees stamp set and the Bill the Bear stamp set. So they both have these little teeny tiny bees. They're going to work really well together and combine really nicely to create this little fun scene here. I'm going to color in the cattails, the greenery there, the brown up at the top. Mix and match all of those colors. And then let's move on to the beehive with yellow and bright yellow. And then the honey pot I decided to go bright with this like I did for the other accessories, and we're going to pull in some pink here, and then the band around the honey pot is going to be gray with some yellow coming out of the top of that. We'll just blend those colors together. Then we're going to take the coordinating Birds and the Bees dies and Bill the Bear dies and die cut everything all at once. So I want to make sure that I die cut all of these little images I'm going to use. I did end up adding another bumblebee to the finished design, which you'll see in a little bit, but it was colored exactly the same, and they're so teeny tiny. Just a little touch of your marker. You don't even have to do a ton of blending. Now, what I love about Bill the Bear is he has tons of accessories. So a couple of different vest options. The hat, there's like a kerosene lamp. There's a bow. You could do a little bow tie if you wanted to. Lots of different things. You could create lots of different scenes. There's even like a little fire. He could look like he's roasting a hot dog or a marshmallow. There's those options. He has a fishing pole and a fish if you want him to be fishing, and a tackle box. So lots and lots of different cards could be created with Bill the Bear. I had posted on Instagram asking what people wanted to see from the new Honeybee Stamps Be Bold release, and several kind of tied. And so the Birds and the Bees and Bill the Bear were a couple of those. So I combined them for this card today. And my next card, I'll share some of the other requested stamps and dies as well. Now I have die cut my background. This is A7 size, remember, so 5 by 7 from Bristol Smooth cardstock, and I've masked off the edge from the stitching line to the scalloped edge, and I'm going to ink up the sky with Salty Ocean Distress Oxide ink for a blue sky background. If you wanted to add even more dimension, consider using the cloud dies. You could use the mountain border die, you could use grass along that bottom edge instead of doing stenciling. I wanted to keep this fairly flat, and to do that, stencils are fantastic because you can just layer them right on the background. A little Gathered Twigs Distress Oxide ink for that mountain border, kind of off in the distance. And then instead of stenciling grass or anything like that, I'm just going to add some peeled Paint Distress Oxide ink along the bottom edge. That's going to add a nice little green touch along the bottom, but we're going to fill in with the tree stump and the cattails and all of that good stuff along the bottom edge. Let's go ahead and start adhering everything to the design, starting with our largest images first. I generally like to start with those and kind of build out and around from there. Make sure get his little vest on correctly. The branch is going to be our other big item. And then anything kind of small, I'm attaching with liquid adhesive using the Ranger Multi-Matte Medium. So here's kind of the things that are going to go along the bottom edge of the card. Pop his hat in place right there. So, so cute. And then the branch is pretty delicate, so I chose to add that with liquid adhesive. We're going to hang the beehive from the branch. You can kind of see the scene all coming together now. And then I'm going to add some greetings right there in between the beehive and then everything along the bottom edge of the scene. So kind of underneath the beehive, up above the cattails and the honey pot. And I'm going to use sentiments from the Goodness Gracious stamp set for this, using my Misty, because the phrase "you are sweeter than honey" from this stamp set is a long phrase. It's a horizontal, and so I'm going to mask off parts of it so that I'm stacking my greetings one on top of another to fit within the design. Starting with thank you, and then we will mask and stamp "you are sweeter" next right under this. So we want to just kind of line that up. I want to make sure I get it centered, almost so it appears that the sentiment is one continuous stamp just like this. I'm going to mask off Than Honey in my Misty ink up the words "You Are Sweeter," remove that mask, and then stamp that right there. And this is where using a stamp positioner is so handy because it did not stamp very well the first time. So I was able to just press that right down in place, and I haven't ruined my background that I've already worked so hard on. So let's clean this stamp really good. Line it up again, trying to center it as close to possible. I'm just eyeballing it. And then we're going to do the same thing, only this time we're going to mask off the first part of the sentiment, ink up the end of the sentiment, remove that mask, and stamp that right there. And there is the greeting for our card. We've got a couple more bees to add and then finishing details, including adding some black glaze pen to the eyes. I'm going to let that dry, and then I'll go back in and add the white pin detail, the little white highlights to the eyes. I like to make sure it's completely dry before I do that. I've also added some little leaves from the Birds and the Bees stamp set. We're going to put a couple to the right of the bear and then one kind of over by the tree stump. I think that fills in the bottom edge of the card really nicely. And then I've got two more bumblebees that I want to add buzzing around the hive. So almost like Bill the Bear is out gathering honey for his honey pot. I love how well the different stamps and dies work together to create different scenes. So here's that white pin adding detail back into the eyes, but it really makes the eyes pop. And it's one of the things I always do. Now I have trimmed a piece of paper down to 10 by 7 inches. And at 5 inches, I am scoring it right in half to make my card base. This is a 5 by 7 card base. And that large A7 scalloped frame is going to fit right on there. In fact, any of the scallop frames from this die collection will work perfectly with this size of card. So if you want to do different mats and layers, maybe not make a scene quite so big, they are going to work perfectly on an A7 sized card. Now, once I have a nice straight edge all the way around, that's really going to be a great time to go ahead and trim off anything hanging off the edge, which is going to be those leaves at the top and the side. I've placed glossy accents on the nose of the bear. Some Nuvo crystal drops in White Blizzard for the wings on the bumblebee. This is going to dry a really pretty iridescent. I do this a lot for the bumblebees from Honeybee Stamps. I like the glittery finish. I'm also going to add that glittery finish to the mushroom on the bottom of the card. I decided I wanted to add a little more sparkle here and there, a few additional little embellished areas, pardon me, even the bee on the honey pot. And then for the beehive itself, to give it some more texture and kind of draw your eye into it more, I'm going to use English Mustard Nuvo Crystal Drops and create little droplets all over this beehive. I'm not going to worry about making them too uniform. I just want to put tiny little droplets all over this. Once dry, it gives it a nice little pebbled finish, but I think it adds great texture to the finished design. As for the opening in the beehive, we're going to take a little glossy accents and add that glossy accents to that so it's a glossy raised finish once dry as well. When I've got all of my embellishing done, this Bill the Bear and Birds and the Bees card featuring new stamps and dies from the Honeybee Be Bold release is all finished. I hope this has inspired you to try creating a larger scale card like this A7 5x7 card here today. The supplies I used to create my card are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Please be sure to subscribe to the Honeybee channel for more inspirational videos. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.